apply that to your life, to your money, to your retirement, to your family's future. Benjamin Graham, the father of value investing, once said, "The purpose of the margin of safety is to render the forecast unnecessary." Let that sink in. He wasn't talking about playing it safe. He was talking about playing to win. Because when you build in a cushion, when you expect the unexpected, you don't need to guess the future. You just need to survive it. Here's the emotional truth. Most people are quietly terrified of not knowing what's coming next. They want a straight-line answer. When will I retire? What will the market return? How much is enough? But the real answer? No one knows. And pretending you do is dangerous. We build retirement plans based on historical averages. But what if your golden years land right after the next crash? What if your health fails? What if your kid needs surgery? What if a job loss wipes out your income for a year? What if your assumptions are wrong? The solution is not fear. It's preparation. It's margin, a gap, a buffer, a safety net that turns chaos into mere inconvenience. Let me tell you a story. During the great financial crisis of 2008, Warren Buffett didn't panic. He slept well. Why? Because he promised himself and his shareholders that Berkshire Hathaway would always keep more than ample cash. He said, "I will not trade even a night's sleep for the chance of extra profits." Let that hit you. The man known for building generational wealth, the Oracle of Omaha himself, values peace of mind over profit. Why don't we? The problem is cultural. We're taught to optimize everything, invest all your cash, max out your leverage, bet big, go hard, be bold. But what happens when the market drops 30% and your spreadsheet says you're technically okay, but your spouse is waking you up at 2 a.m. wondering if you've ruined your kid's future? Spreadsheets don't measure anxiety. And let's be real, if you're emotionally broken, if you're physically exhausted, if you lose trust in your decisions, you're out of the game. That's game over. And there are no extra lives. So what does room for error look like? It's assuming 5% returns instead of 7, and saving a little more. It's keeping 6 months of expenses in cash, not because you're weak, but because you're wise. It's knowing you could be wrong, and designing your life so it doesn't destroy you when you are. This isn't about being conservative. It's about endurance. And endurance beats brilliance every time. The biggest gains in wealth don't come from bold predictions. They come from not getting knocked out, from sticking around long enough to catch that rare bull run, that compound interest curve, that once-in-a-decade opportunity. Here's the urgent truth. If you're 25 or 55, the same rule applies. Build your future with the expectation that the world will not go as planned. And if you're wrong, you'll have extra money, extra time, extra peace. If you're right, you'll still be standing when everyone else is scrambling for survival. Room for error is not fear. It's not weakness. It's the ultimate financial superpower. So ask yourself, what's your margin of safety? Because when the next storm hits, and it will, you'll either be the one rebuilding or the one people run to for help. Make your choice while you still can.
Part 2.
The game you can't afford to lose. Imagine this, you're offered a bet. A single spin of the chamber, 1 bullet, 5 empty slots. If you win, you walk away with $1 million. If you lose, well, you never walk away again. Would you take it? The odds are in your favor, statistically. 5 out of 6 times, you'd be rich. But any sane person would slam that revolver down and walk away. Because even if the math is on your side, the cost of being wrong is death. Now let me ask you something far more subtle. Why do so many of us play financial Russian roulette every single day? The hidden killer in your wallet. Most of us don't recognize when we're doing it because the game looks so innocent. It's signing for a bigger mortgage than you can truly afford because home prices always go up. It's taking on debt to chase a dream investment because this opportunity won't come again. It's putting your future on the line for what looks like a sure thing. And statistically, it usually works. But that one time it doesn't? That's the one that can destroy you. Ask anyone who got wiped out in 2008. Ask the traders at Lehman Brothers. Ask the families who had to sell their homes, their security, their peace. Leverage doesn't just increase your upside, it multiplies your exposure to catastrophe. It turns a routine downturn into personal ruin. And ruin is not something you can bounce back from easily. Because ruin doesn't just take your money, it takes your ability to recover. It takes your chance to play again. The seduction of smart optimism. We live in a world that rewards optimism. Bet on yourself. Take the leap. Fortune favors the bold. And it's true. Calculated risk is essential to growth. You don't get ahead by playing it safe all the time. But there's a difference between being bold and being blind. Nassim Taleb said it best. You can be risk-loving and yet completely averse to ruin. It's not contradictory. It's wise. Because success is a game of endurance, not bravado. You don't win by hitting 1 home run. You win by staying in the game long enough to hit 100 singles. The survival strategy of the wealthy. Let me tell you a secret the smartest investors, entrepreneurs, and builders live by. They protect against the downside, even when it seems unlikely. They use what Taleb calls the barbell strategy. On one side, they take asymmetric risks, small downsides, huge potential upsides. On the other side, they are paranoid about loss. They hold cash. They own boring assets. They keep their burn rate low. This isn't fear. This is discipline. This is the mindset of people who don't just want to win. They want to keep winning. The infinite return of staying alive. Here's the ultimate truth. The most valuable asset you will ever own is the ability to keep playing the game. Because once you're out, once you're wiped out, once you're ruined, it doesn't matter how smart you were or how great the odds were. The most powerful wealth-building move you can make isn't chasing the next big return. It's survival. And survival means building in room for error. It means never betting the house. It means walking away from any deal, no matter how good it looks, if the downside is something you cannot afford. Because the ability to do what you want, when you want, for as long as you want, that's not just wealth. That's freedom. And freedom, my friend, is worth more than any $1,000,000 bet. Don't play games you can't afford to lose. Stay in the game. That's how you win.
Part 3.
Let me tell you a story, not just about money, but about survival, control, and how the tiniest oversight can turn into a catastrophe. It's late 1942. In the frozen wastelands outside the battered ruins of Stalingrad, 104 German tanks stood ready. Well-oiled machines, state-of-the-art engineering, months of planning behind them. But when the call to action came, when those tanks were needed most, only 19 of them worked. Not because they'd been hit, not because of sabotage, not even because of harsh weather. Field mice had chewed through the wiring. That's right. The most powerful military in the world at that time was sidelined by rodents. No strategist had planned for it. No tank designer had built defenses against it. It wasn't in the manuals. It wasn't in the risk reports. It wasn't even in the realm of possibility until it happened. And that's the point. You don't get to choose the crises life throws your way. They're rarely dramatic, like a recession, a war, or a market crash. More often, they're quiet, creeping, nasty surprises born from things you never thought to worry about until they're tearing your life apart. Your company gets hacked, your startup loses its lease, your roof collapses, your savings disappear because a medical bill arrives out of nowhere. Your job, your sole source of income, vanishes overnight. None of this is theoretical. These things happen, and they happen more often than anyone wants to admit. Now here's what should scare you. Most people, especially in the wealthiest country on earth, are one paycheck away from chaos. No backup, no redundancy, no margin of safety. They believe that if they plan well enough, budget precisely enough, work hard enough, they'll be fine. But the problem with perfect plans is that they assume a perfect world. And the world, it's not just imperfect, it's ruthless. Now let me ask you something hard. Where are the field mice in your life? Not literally, but metaphorically. What small, forgotten risk is silently chewing through your wiring? What part of your life is built on a single point of failure? If your paycheck stopped tomorrow, how long could you last? If your car broke down, could you fix it? If a family member needed emergency care, could you help? This isn't about pessimism. It's about preparedness. Warren Buffett once said he needed a successor genetically programmed to avoid ruin, including the kinds of ruin never seen before. Let that sink in. Because the most successful investors, leaders, and builders, the ones who stay rich, not just get rich, don't bet on avoiding risk. They build lives where failure is survivable, where the worst-case scenario doesn't mean the end. Look, I get it. Saving money feels boring. It's not exciting, like investing in the next big thing or launching a business. But here's what people miss. Saving isn't just about the future. It's about protecting the present. It's about saying, even if everything goes wrong, if the market tanks, if I lose my job, if my plan falls apart, I won't, because I have room for error. You don't save just for a house, you save for the mice, for the thing you never saw coming, for the disaster no one predicts. For the night the lights go out, and no one can explain why. Because when the unthinkable happens, and one day it will, the people who survive aren't the smartest or the luckiest. They're the ones who left room for error. So today ask yourself, where is your single point of failure? Where do you need a backup? And what can you start doing right now, not tomorrow, not next year, to build a little more breathing room into your life? Because the thing you don't prepare for, that's what breaks you. And if you're smart, if you really care about your future, you won't just plan for success. You'll plan to survive failure. And that might just be the smartest move you ever make. Chapter 14. You'll change. Let me tell you a story. I grew up with a friend. No family name, no special gifts, nothing handed to him. But that kid had something even more powerful. Relentlessness. Grit in its purest form. His dream? Become a doctor. Now understand, this wasn't some middle-class kid choosing between med school or business school. He came from nothing. His schools were underfunded. His environment was full of noise and distraction. Most people around him were just trying to survive. But he refused to be average. He studied while others slept, worked double shifts while his peers partied, and kept marching even when the road was paved with rejection. And eventually, a decade older than most of his classmates, he became what he set out to be, a doctor. It should have been a fairy tale ending, but life rarely sticks to the script. I caught up with him years later. "Hey man, long time. How are you?" "Awful career." He interrupted. I laughed, unsure if he was joking. "I'm serious, awful career." For 10 minutes, that was his refrain. The stress, the grueling hours, the soul-crushing bureaucracy, it had broken the man who once bulldozed his way through every obstacle. Here's the truth most people don't talk about. You will change. Not just a little, not just your circumstances, you. The illusion that traps us all. Psychologists call it the end of history illusion. The belief that while we know how much we've changed in the past, we somehow think we've reached our final form now. That today, we've become who we'll always be. But you haven't, and you won't. That's why the career you chase at 20 might suffocate you at 40. That's why the financial plan you made before kids might collapse once diapers and daycare hit. That's why dreams that once kept you up at night might one day feel like cages you desperately want to escape from. And it's not failure. It's not weakness. It's evolution. The danger of a life set in stone. Let's get real. Most 5-year-olds want to drive tractors. Then they grow up and want to be lawyers. Then they become lawyers and realize they never see their kids. So they switch to a job with more flexibility, only to discover childcare eats up the paycheck. So they stay home. And by 70, they realize they're unprepared for retirement. Was any of it a mistake? No. It was life. It was change. It was adapting in real time to new circumstances, new values, and a new version of yourself. But the danger is in refusing to adapt your financial life alongside your personal evolution. That's where regret breeds. That's where dreams turn to burdens. Regret is the real cost. The people who feel the most lost aren't those who failed. They're the ones who succeeded at something that no longer fulfills them and feel too trapped to change. They're the ones who save for a future they no longer want, or who stuck with a job they chose when they were too young to understand what life really demands. As the brilliant Daniel Gilbert put it, young people pay good money to get tattoos removed that teenagers paid good money to get. Middle-aged people rush to divorce people who young adults rush to marry. Change is not the enemy. Refusing to admit you've changed is. How to plan in a world where you will change. So what's the answer? How do you build a financial life in a world where your goals, identity, and values will evolve? Here's the key. Balance and flexibility beat precision. 1. Avoid extremes. Don't assume you'll be happy with very little. Don't bet your life on a high-income grind either. People adapt to both, but the downsides of extremes, burnout, resentment, lost time, tend to last longer than the highs. 2. Compound moderately, endure massively. The magic of compounding only works if you let it breathe. That means creating a lifestyle that doesn't burn you out. Moderate savings, moderate time with family, moderate work hours. Balance gives you staying power. 3. Let go of sunk costs. Clinging to a plan you made when you were a different person is like letting a stranger run your life. Kill bad plans without guilt. The faster you do it, the faster you can get back to compounding something new. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman, one of the smartest minds of our time, was known for rewriting chapters from scratch even after weeks of hard work. When asked how he could start over so freely, he said, "I have no sunk costs." That's the mindset. You'll change. Your job may change. Your family might change. Your health, your values, your passions, they will evolve. But if you build your financial life to bend without breaking, if you can adapt without regret, you give yourself something rare, freedom to become who you're meant to be next. And that's a kind of wealth no one can take from you. Next up, the cost of compounding, and why most people never pay it. Chapter 15, Nothing is Free, the Hidden Price of Every Dream. We live in a world addicted to the illusion of ease. Free shipping, no money down, make 6 figures from home. But let's make something brutally clear. Nothing is free. Not success, not security, not even survival. Everything has a price. The tragedy? That price often isn't printed on a label. It doesn't appear on the receipt. It comes due silently, after the fact, when you're too deep in the game to back out. And by then, you're either prepared to pay, or you're paying with regret. Take General Electric, the crown jewel of American capitalism. In 2004, GE wasn't just a company, it was the company, worth over $300 billion. A titan, a monument to industrial dominance. For decades, it symbolized stability, innovation, and power. But behind the curtain, it was a delicate machine, partly powered by its massive financing division, which made up over half of GE's profits. And when the 2008 financial crisis hit, that engine cracked open and hemorrhaged. What followed was brutal. A collapse in energy bets, billions in losses, and a stock that nosedived from $40 to $7 over the next decade. The world turned on CEO Jeff Immelt, who once steered GE through acclaim and boardroom triumphs. Critics called him reckless, blind, foolish. Headlines screamed, he should have known. But as he walked out of the company he once ruled, Immelt offered a haunting truth to his successor. Every job looks easy when you're not the one doing it. It's easy to mock the failure of giants from the sidelines, but real leadership, the kind that bears the weight of decisions that can destroy empires, is a burden no outsider can truly see. You think you want success? Do you know what it costs? Success will ask for your time, your peace, your pride. It'll demand sleepless nights, shattered confidence, impossible decisions, and the ability to stand alone when everyone else is pointing fingers. The real cost is often invisible until the bill is overdue. Immelt's successor didn't last 15 months. Because understanding the idea of leadership and carrying its crushing weight are two entirely different things. Here's the truth. The people who win aren't always the smartest. They're the ones willing to pay the hidden price. So before you chase the spotlight, the empire, the million-dollar idea, stop and ask, what does it cost, and am I willing to pay it fully, painfully, and without applause? Because every dream has a price. And the only thing more expensive than success is pretending it should be free.
Part 1.
The high price of wealth. Why trying to cheat the market always backfires. Imagine this. If you had simply invested in the S&P 500 and done nothing else, no market timing, no fancy predictions, no stress trading, you could have seen your money multiply 119-fold over 50 years ending in 2018. Just sit back. Let compounding do the heavy lifting. Sounds easy, right? But here's the truth. Successful investing is never easy when you're the one in the arena. You'll hear advice like, hold stocks for the long run. It's technically sound. But do you know what it actually feels like when your portfolio is plunging and every headline screams recession? It feels like fear, doubt, uncertainty, regret. The emotional cost of real returns. Here's the brutal truth most never admit. The cost of great returns isn't measured in dollars. It's paid in anxiety. It's paid in sleepless nights. It's paid in enduring the chaos while holding on for the ride. Everyone wants the 11% annual return, but nobody wants the emotional roller coaster that comes with earning it. Imagine buying a $30,000 car. You can either 1. Pay full price. 2. Settle for a cheaper one. 3. Steal it. We know number 3 is idiotic because the consequences aren't worth the reward. But investing? People try to steal returns all the time. They want that same 11% annual gain without the gut-punching drawdowns, the panic-filled headlines, or the pain of patience. They try to time the market. Jump in, jump out. Avoid volatility. Outsmart recessions. It's like trying to steal a Ferrari and expecting to live free and clear. The price is the point. Let's make this real. Netflix delivered over 35,000% returns from 2002 to 2018, but it traded below its all-time high on 94% of trading days. Monster Beverage returned an insane 319,000% over 23 years, but it was underwater 95% of the time. That's the market's trade-off. You can have incredible wealth if you're willing to bleed a little. The price of admission? Watching your investment plunge, sometimes for years, and still having the guts to stay seated. The delusion of shortcutting the system. Morningstar tracked 112 tactical mutual funds, those supposedly smart enough to dodge market declines. During 2010 to 2011, when markets were chaotic, only 9 outperformed a simple 60-40 index fund. Most were worse, despite trying harder. Why? Because volatility is not avoidable. It's the cost of greatness. Even individual investors fall for the illusion. They jump in and out of funds, reacting to fear. The average investor earns less than the very fund they invest in, just because they don't stay put. That's not smart investing. That's paying double because you refuse to pay once. The illusion of safety is the most dangerous lie. Even giants fall. GE under Jack Welch was worshipped for its flawless earnings reports. Like a magician, Welch always beat Wall Street's estimates, but it was an illusion, a house built on borrowed time and borrowed numbers. Eventually, the facade cracked. GE shareholders paid the deferred bill, with interest. Decades of manipulation collapsed into mammoth losses. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac tried the same trick, hiding earnings to smooth out the future. When the storm hit, they had no shelter left. Here's the law no one escapes. You can delay paying the price, but you can never avoid it. Nash, the final lesson. If you want wealth, freedom, and peace of mind, the kind that builds a lasting legacy, you have 3 options. 1. Pay the price. Endure the ups and downs. Stay calm. Stay invested. 2. Settle for less. Choose safety, lower risk, and lower reward. 3. Try to cheat the game. Jump in and out, avoid the pain, dodge the price. And like the car thief, most who try to cheat will eventually lose everything. So next time the market dips, remember, that fear you feel, that uncertainty, that storm in your stomach, that is the price. And paying it is what separates the wealthy from the wishful. Because wealth doesn't come to those who try to avoid the pain. It comes to those brave enough to endure it. The market doesn't reward brilliance. It rewards resilience.
Part 2.
The price of the ride, why most people miss the magic of investing. Imagine a man named David. He's standing in line at Disneyland, clutching the hand of his 8-year-old daughter. It's hot. The line is long. The ticket in his pocket cost him over $100 each. He's tired, but he's smiling. Because he knows what's coming. Laughter, magic, memory-making moments. David doesn't complain about the price, because it feels like a fee, a cost you choose to pay for something wonderful. Now shift the scene. Same David, 2 years later. He finally worked up the courage to invest in the stock market. He did everything right. Read books, built a plan, chose a low-cost index fund, and then, boom, the market drops 20%. His stomach sinks. Even though he intellectually knew this could happen, emotionally, it feels like a fine. Not a fee. Not the price of admission. A punishment. For being naive. For taking a risk. For doing something wrong. And that's where most people break. The emotional misdirection that kills wealth. Why do people happily pay $800 a month for a car, $6 for coffee, and $5,000 for a vacation, but recoil at the idea of watching their investments dip, even temporarily? Because the price of investing success is invisible, until it hits you. There's no receipt, no itemized bill, just uncertainty, fear, and that sinking feeling in your gut. But here's the truth that can change everything. Market volatility is not a punishment, it's a ticket. It's the price of admission. You're not being fined. You're being asked if you're still willing to ride the ride. The Disneyland illusion. Every year, 18 million people willingly hand over $100 plus per ticket to Disneyland. No one calls it a fine. They call it magic. They leave with memories, photos, joy. They expected to pay for something extraordinary. Investing is the same. But because the return doesn't come gift-wrapped in fireworks and music, we mistake the ride for a wreck. You will feel it when the market drops. It will test your stomach. But that feeling, that discomfort, isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's proof you're on the right ride. What are you actually buying? Let's be honest, nobody wants to lose 20% of their money. Especially not first-timers. But that temporary drop, that's the very reason you can expect a long-term gain. Cash doesn't drop, bonds don't swing wildly. That's why they also don't compound like the market does. You're not just buying stocks, you're buying access to a better future. You're buying freedom. It's options. But that kind of access isn't free. Never has been. Never will be. The real question, are you willing to pay the price? To sit with discomfort? To reframe fear as investment in progress? To look volatility in the eye and say, I see you, and I accept you, because I know what I'm here for. Because that's what separates investors from spectators, tourists from builders, people who live paycheck to paycheck from those who build lasting wealth. If you see it as a fine, you'll run. If you see it as a fee, you'll win. The difference is everything. You don't have to buy the Disneyland ticket. You can go to the county fair, stay home, keep your cash in a jar, and maybe you'll sleep easier tonight. But if you want more, if you want the magic, you have to be willing to pay the price most never will. Yes, sometimes it rains at Disneyland, but the magic never disappears. So ask yourself, are you trying to avoid the price, or are you ready to earn the reward? Because the market doesn't fine you, it challenges you. And if you can find the courage to call that challenge what it really is, a fee worth paying, then wealth becomes not just possible, it becomes inevitable. Chapter 16, You and Me. A story of financial illusions, false signals, and the danger of following the wrong crowd. Imagine waking up one morning in 2001 and realizing your retirement account has been gutted. Gone. Just like that. $6.2 trillion in household wealth vanished when the dot-com bubble burst. Or picture the summer of 2008. The housing market collapses. $8 trillion evaporates. Jobs disappear. Families are forced out of homes they could once afford. Entire communities hollowed out, not by war, not by a natural disaster, but by a financial illusion. Now take a breath, because here's the truth. These aren't isolated incidents. These are recurring tragedies. We like to think we'd never fall for it, that we're the rational ones, that it's always someone else's greed, someone else's mistake. But bubbles don't form because people go crazy. They form because people start taking cues from others, without realizing they're not even playing the same game. The hidden crisis. You wouldn't walk into a hospital and take medical advice meant for someone else's body. Yet millions of investors do just that with their money, every single day. They buy when others buy. They sell when others panic. They hear a confident voice on TV or see a rising price on a chart and think, maybe they know something I don't. It feels smart. It feels exciting. It feels urgent. And that's the trap. Different games, same field. Let me ask you something simple. How much would you pay for a share of Google? That answer isn't just about math. It's about time. Are you holding for 30 years? Then you care about long-term fundamentals. Are you flipping it by Friday? Then all you care about is the next headline, the next bump, the next heartbeat of market sentiment. Now imagine these two people, one looking decades ahead, the other focused on the next 10 minutes, buying the same stock. Same price, same market, same day. But they are playing completely different games. And yet, their actions influence each other. That's where the real danger begins. When the wrong people set the price. During the dot-com boom, Yahoo stock soared to insane valuations. You'd be right to say this made no sense. But day traders weren't analyzing 10-year projections. They were riding daily waves. For them, the price did make sense, because their game was short-term momentum. The same story unfolded in the housing market. Who in their right mind pays $700,000 for a small Florida home? Someone who plans to flip it in 3 months and pocket the difference. When short-term traders flood the market, they don't just play their game, they set the rules for everyone. They become the price setters. And if you're a long-term investor who starts following their lead, you're not just playing a different game, you're playing a dangerous one. The illusion of rationality. Were these people irrational? Not always. They were just playing a game that made sense to them. The irrationality lies in the rest of us, those who let ourselves be influenced by them without understanding their goals. You start to think, maybe I should buy too. And once you do, you're not investing anymore. You're chasing. The collision that hurts. Imagine two runners sprinting at each other from opposite ends of the field. They're focused, determined, and completely unaware that they're on a collision course. That's the market. Day traders and long-term investors might not even know the other exists, but when their paths cross, someone always gets hurt. Usually, it's the one who thought they were playing the safe, patient game until the rules changed under their feet. Know your game. Here's the part no one talks about enough. There is no universal rulebook for investing. Not everyone is playing for the same goals, under the same pressure, on the same timeline. And when you start copying others without knowing what game they're playing, you become a puppet, not a player. That's why your mission matters. You have to define it. Years ago, I wrote mine down. I am a passive investor, optimistic in the world's ability to grow over the next 30 years, and confident that growth will accrue to my investments. It changed everything. Because now, when the market spikes or crashes, when the headlines scream or whisper, I don't flinch. I know which game I'm playing, and I know which ones I'm not. The emotional cost of comparison. But this isn't just about stocks. It's about life. We compare ourselves constantly, how we dress, what we drive, where we vacation. But we never see the full picture. You don't see the mortgage behind the mansion, or the anxiety behind the sports car. You're borrowing someone else's expectations, then punishing yourself for not measuring up to their results, without knowing the price they paid to get there. And it leaves you empty. The final warning bubbles don't just wreck economies. They wreck lives, because people follow others into financial chaos without stopping to ask, are we even playing the same game? You and I, we don't get to control what the market does, but we do get to control how we react. We get to choose our strategy, our timeline, our goals. If you take nothing else from this, let it be this. Figure out what game you're playing, then play it with everything you've got. Ignore the noise, guard your goals, and never, ever take your cues from someone who doesn't know your story. Next, why pessimism sounds smart, but costs you everything. Chapter 17, The Seduction of Pessimism. Why fear sells, and hope quietly wins. There's a reason fear spreads faster than facts. It demands your attention, hijacks your emotion, and paralyzes your logic. For decades, the human brain has been wired not to seek truth, but to survive. And in the realm of survival, pessimism has a powerful edge. We live in a world where optimism builds empires, yet pessimism headlines the news. The ancient allure of doom. There is no more common emotion in investing or in life than fear, and there's no better way to sound intelligent than to predict disaster. Look around. When someone says the world is ending, the room gets quiet. People lean in, voices drop, the mood shifts, but say that things are improving, that life will get better, that progress is real, and you'll often get a patronizing smile or a dismissive shrug. It's not that optimism is rare, it's that it feels unsafe. Naive, even. As historian Deirdre McCloskey said, for reasons I have never understood, people like to hear that the world is going to hell. Why? Because fear feels protective. Fear feels like control. Optimism versus delusion. Let's be clear, optimism is not blind faith. It's not ignorance of risk. Real optimism is choosing to bet on progress despite knowing that setbacks, crashes, and chaos are inevitable. It's understanding that markets crash, but then recover. That recessions come, but so does innovation. That war destroys, and yet peace rebuilds. Optimism is believing that tomorrow holds more potential than pain, not because it always will, but because it usually does. Statistician Hans Rosling once said, I am not an optimist. I am a very serious possibilist. And that's the point. It's not about delusion, it's about data, and what history shows over and over again. A tale of two predictions. Flashback to December 29th, 2008. The financial world was burning. Fear was everywhere, unemployment rising, markets collapsing, and on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, a wild forecast from a Russian academic predicting that the United States would break into 6 nations, with parts reverting to Chinese, Mexican, Russian, and Canadian control. No, this wasn't a fringe blog. It was one of the world's most respected publications. And people believed it, because when you're scared, doomsday sounds logical. Now imagine if, during the famine-stricken, war-torn days of post-U2 Japan, someone had published this. In a generation, Japan will become one of the richest, healthiest, most technologically advanced countries on Earth. Life expectancy will double. Its economy will explode. Its stock market will soar. America will beg to learn from its companies. They'd be laughed out of the room. But that's exactly what happened. Why we believe the worst. The truth is, pessimism sounds smart, urgent, thoughtful, while optimism sounds like wishful thinking. Say the market will crash, you'll get on CNBC. Say things are improving, you'll be accused of selling something. And that's why pessimism sells. Tell someone a stock will rise tenfold, and they'll scoff. Tell them it's about to collapse, and they'll cancel their meetings to hear you out. Fear demands our attention. Hope asks for patience. And attention is currency, especially in a world flooded with noise. The cost of constant fear, this bias toward pessimism isn't just intellectual, it's expensive. Every time you fall for a doomsday prediction, you miss out on pounding. Every time you panic sell, you interrupt long-term growth. Every time you avoid risk out of fear, you pay the silent price of missed opportunity. In the last century, despite wars, pandemics, crashes, and crises, the US stock market rose 17,000-fold, dividends included. But no newsletter is going to sell subscriptions by telling you everything is probably going to be okay. The bravery of believing in better, true optimism is courageous. It's saying, I know things can go wrong, but I'm choosing to participate in the solution anyway. Optimism is a bet on human behavior. That people wake up, work hard, solve problems, and build better futures. Not every time, not flawlessly, but consistently enough to matter. Pessimism will always be louder, but that doesn't make it wiser. As economist Matt Ridley wrote, if you say catastrophe is imminent, you may expect a Genius Award or the Nobel Peace Prize. If you say the world is getting better, you're naive. But if you want to understand the world, follow the facts, not the fear. Final thought. The most reasonable bet, pessimism plays to your fear. Optimism invites you to think long-term. And in the end, while pessimism may be seductive, it's optimism that pays. It's optimism that builds wealth, careers, companies, and nations. So ask yourself this. Do you want to be the smartest person in the room, predicting the end? Or the quiet one outside the room, building the future everyone else was too scared to believe in? Choose your bet. The future listens.
Part 1.
Let's begin with this unsettling truth. No one is crazy. But when it comes to money, when it comes to fear, risk, loss, and regret, we are all deeply human. And that, right there, is the point. Why pessimism sells and why it can sabotage your future. Think about this. You've never seen a breaking news alert that says, everything's fine, keep investing. But markets crash, recession looms, inflation skyrockets. Those headlines dominate. Why? Because pessimism has a powerful seduction. And it's not your fault. It's in your biology. Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman said it best. Losses loom larger than gains. It's not just a saying, it's a survival mechanism. Your ancestors weren't anxious about opportunity. They were wired to run from threats. That's how they lived long enough to pass on their genes. And today, you've inherited that wiring. The brain screams, protect, retreat, survive. Every time your 401k dips or a financial storm brews on the horizon, even when it's just a temporary storm. The danger of logical fear. Here's the trap. Pessimism doesn't just feel more urgent, it sounds more rational. It wears a suit. It quotes data. It sounds like it's looking out for you. And that's why people fall for it. Fear says, what if the market crashes again? What if you lose everything? What if it's too late to start? But optimism? Optimism sounds naive, childish, reckless. Until you realize this undeniable fact. The US stock market has grown more than 100-fold over the last century, not because everything was perfect, but because optimism, even in chaos, was usually right. The urgency of perspective. You are living in one of the most resource-rich, innovation-driven eras in human history. But if you listen only to the voice of fear, you'll miss it. You'll miss the long-term wealth that comes not from perfect timing, but from patient, confident action. You'll miss the magic of compounding, of planting seeds today that won't bloom for years, but when they do, they can transform generations. You'll miss the chance to be the calm in the storm. While others panic, you build. Choose courage over comfort. Yes, risk is real. Loss is real. Recessions happen, bubbles burst, but so do recoveries. So do booms. So does growth. And in the long run, history hasn't been kind to those who let fear dictate their financial destiny. So the question is not, what if everything goes wrong? The real question is, what will you miss if you don't act? Because while pessimism sounds smart, optimism is where the money is made. Not blind optimism, not fantasy, but informed belief in a future that rewards patience, resilience, and courage. And the clock is ticking. Your future self is waiting. Will you let fear run your money, or will you take the reins and run your future? Decide now, before someone else does it for you.
Part 2.
The economy doesn't knock. It breaks down the door. There's a reason money commands our constant attention. It's everywhere. It touches everything. When something goes wrong with money, when the economy falters, it doesn't just happen to someone else. It happens to everyone, including you. That's what makes financial events uniquely terrifying. A hurricane crashing into Florida is a tragedy, but unless you live there, it's a headline, not a personal threat. But a recession? That doesn't just knock on your door. It crashes through it. Your job, your savings, your rent, your groceries, every corner of your life feels the tremor. Even if you've never bought a single share of stock, the market has a way of finding you. Over half of American households do own stocks, but even those that don't are hit by the tidal wave of media coverage every time the market takes a dip. You've seen the red headlines. You've felt the shift in mood. A 1% gain is background noise. A 1% drop, that's front page panic. And when the market falls, we don't just observe, we analyze, we panic, we assign blame. Is the Fed losing control? Is this political incompetence? Is this the start of something worse? We don't do this with optimism. A rising market is assumed. A falling market is a story, and stories demand attention. This isn't new. Before the Great Depression, only 2.5% of Americans owned stock. Yet, when the market crashed in 1929, the entire nation froze in disbelief. It didn't matter if you were a banker in Manhattan or a mechanic in rural Ohio, you felt the ground shift beneath you. Historian Eric Rockway captured this moment of collective paralysis, writing, "This fall in value immediately afflicted only a few Americans. But so closely had the others watched the market and regarded it as an index of their fates that they suddenly stopped much of their economic activity. Or, as economist Joseph Schumpeter chillingly summarized, people felt that the ground under their feet was giving way." You don't have to care about the stock market for it to care about you. There are only two forces in life that will affect you whether you want them to or not: your health and your money. And while health tends to be personal, money is systemic. It's a shared ecosystem. When one part breaks, we all feel the pressure. One person's panic can ripple through the entire economy and your life. This is why financial awareness isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Because in a world where a single headline can change the trajectory of your life, ignorance isn't bliss, it's exposure. So pay attention. Not because you want to be scared, but because not paying attention is far more dangerous.
Part 3.
Imagine waking up to headlines screaming that the world is running out of oil. Prices are soaring, panic is setting in. Experts warn that demand will outpace supply by a staggering margin. And for a moment, the future looks dark, chaotic even. That was the world in 2008. Environmentalist Lester Brown warned that by 2030, China alone would need 98 million barrels of oil per day. The global supply at the time? Just 85 million. If you followed that straight line, the outcome was inevitable. Catastrophe. And yet, that disaster never came. Why? Because markets don't stand still. Humans don't stand still. There is a fundamental law in economics and life. The extremes don't last. Whether things are going extraordinarily well or terribly wrong, reality has a way of correcting itself. Not always in ways we can see in the moment, but always through the tireless push and pull of supply, demand, and innovation. When oil hit $138 a barrel, the world didn't collapse. It adapted. What was once too expensive to drill suddenly became worth its weight in gold. Innovation surged. Fracking and horizontal drilling unlocked reserves previously thought unreachable. In just over a decade, U.S. oil production more than doubled. Global supply surpassed 100 million barrels per day. The crisis that once seemed inevitable was not only avoided, it was obliterated by human ingenuity. This is more than a story about oil. It's a wake-up call about how we think and fear the future. Pessimism feels safe, it feels smart, it sounds rational, but it often fails to account for the most powerful force in economics: incentive-fueled innovation. Fear thrives when we assume the future is linear, when we believe today's problems will grow unchecked, unstoppable. But the truth is, problems don't just grow, they provoke. They provoke ideas, they provoke breakthroughs, they provoke change. The real danger isn't in the crisis. The danger is in believing that nothing will change. So the next time you hear a dire prediction, ask yourself, is this forecasting the future or just projecting the present? History shows us that necessity is more than the mother of invention. It's the spark of resilience, the fuel of progress, and the reason why humanity continues to defy even its most convincing doomsday prophets. Don't bet against adaptation, don't bet against progress, and most of all, don't bet against people.
Part 4.
The invisible ascent, why we miss the power of progress. Progress whispers, but setbacks? They scream. It's a cruel imbalance of perception. Progress unfolds so slowly, it slips past unnoticed. Setbacks, on the other hand, are loud, fast, and unforgettable. Explosions make headlines, compounding goes unseen. There are 1,000 overnight tragedies. But overnight miracles? Almost none. Take January 5th, 1889. The Detroit Free Press confidently declared that man would never fly. The weight, the science, it was all wrong, they said. Nature has reached her limit, the article warned. To believe otherwise was to flirt with fantasy. 6 months later, a teenager named Orville Wright dropped out of high school to join his brother Wilbur in a dusty workshop. They weren't aerospace engineers. They weren't funded by government grants. They were just two obsessed brothers with a dream and a bicycle shop. Within a few years, they shattered the very laws of possibility the world had taken for granted. And yet, no one noticed. For years after their first flight, the world remained blind to the miracle taking shape. Witnesses in Dayton, Ohio shrugged off what they saw. Must have been a trick, they thought, like watching someone bend a spoon with their mind. Surely not real. Not until 1908, 4.5 years later, did the media begin to take them seriously. Not until then did the world wake up and realize the sky was no longer the limit. It was only the beginning. But even after that, society couldn't grasp what they had done. It wasn't seen as a vehicle of commerce, connection, or peace, but merely a tool of war, or a novelty for the rich. In 1909, the Washington Post scoffed. There will never be such a thing as commercial aerial freighters. 5 months later, the first cargo plane took off. Here's the deeper truth. Optimism is slow and silent. Pessimism is fast and loud. We are wired to respond to speed and sound, which means we're wired to miss what matters most. We panic over bankruptcies, stock crashes, and job losses. We obsess over plane crashes, fascinated by destruction in real time. But we overlook the miracle of flight itself. The miracle that was once impossible. The miracle we now complain about when the Wi-Fi doesn't work at 30,000 feet. This is true in medicine. Heart disease deaths in America have plummeted by over 70% since 1965. That's like saving the entire population of Atlanta every single year. But no one notices. Why? Because it didn't happen in a moment. It happened over decades. Quietly, uncelebrated. Compare that to something like a terrorist attack, a hurricane, a mass shooting. They dominate headlines, ignite fear, and stir emotion, because they happen suddenly. But the steady victories of humanity? They're buried, ignored, taken for granted. Business works the same way. It took years for the world to understand the potential of companies like Amazon or Apple. But one bad quarter, one missed earnings call, and billions can vanish overnight. Stock markets, they can quietly triple over a decade and get a passing mention. But let them fall 40% in 6 months, and Congress is demanding answers. Your career? You can spend a lifetime building a reputation and lose it all in a single email. This is why pessimism feels smarter. It's quicker to process. It feels urgent. But optimism, it requires patience. It asks you to see the big picture, to trust in slow and silent growth when everything in your biology is screaming, run. And yet, if you want to succeed, truly succeed, you must reverse that instinct. You must recognize that the price of progress is often invisible, that success demands you endure loss, volatility, boredom, and time. That while pain happens in an instant, growth happens in the background. Every investor, every entrepreneur, every dreamer must understand. The rewards go to those who can hold the long view in a short-term world. Because when you learn to listen for the whisper of progress amidst the noise of chaos, that's when you truly begin to win.
Part 5.
In 2004, the New York Times sat down with one of the most brilliant minds the world has ever known, Stephen Hawking. By then, Hawking had lived over 4 decades with an unforgiving motor neuron disease that had robbed him of speech, movement, and the ability to live without a wheelchair. But it hadn't taken his spirit. Speaking through his computerized voice, he shared how thrilled he was that his books about black holes, time, and the cosmos were being embraced by everyday people, not just scientists. "Are you always this cheerful?" the interviewer asked. Hawking's reply? "My expectations were reduced to 0 when I was 21. Everything since then has been a bonus." Think about that. Here was a man who had every reason to surrender to despair, and instead, he chose gratitude, chose joy, chose optimism. Not the naive kind that ignores reality, but the powerful kind that survives it. There's a hidden truth in what he said. When your expectations are low, every good thing feels like a miracle. But when you expect greatness all the time, even the best moments can feel ordinary. That's why pessimism can feel so safe. It shields us. It says prepare for the worst, so you never feel blindsided. And when life turns out better than feared, there's a strange kind of relief. But here's the trap. Pessimism might protect you from disappointment, but it robs you of momentum. It stops you from dreaming big, from starting bold, from believing in what's possible. And that's far more dangerous, because progress, the kind that transforms lives, requires hope. And hope is risky. But it's also the only thing that has ever moved the world forward. So if you're standing at a crossroads, faced with uncertainty, fear, or doubt, remember Hawking, a man who had lost nearly everything, but still believed the future could be beautiful. Expect less, appreciate more, fear less, risk more, because when you stop seeing life as owed to you, everything becomes a gift. Now let me tell you a short story. A story about stories, and how the ones we choose to believe shape the lives we choose to live. Chapter 18. When you will believe anything. Imagine an alien, not a green, bug-eyed creature, but a highly intelligent observer sent to Earth to monitor human progress. His mission, track the economic vitality of our species. He floats above Times Square on New Year's Eve, 2007. Below him, the streets pulse with energy. Flashing billboards, fireworks, news cameras, tens of thousands of cheerful faces counting down to midnight. Everything screams confidence, prosperity, momentum. 2 years later, New Year's Eve 2009, he returns. The scene looks eerily similar. Same lights, same parties, same excitement. He zooms in. Office buildings are still humming with activity. Trucks move steadily along highways. Universities are still handing out diplomas. Labs still patenting ideas. In fact, he notices some clear improvements. Smartphones now in every hand. Social media transforming communication. Medicine advancing. Solar energy booming. The world looks like it's moving forward. So he concludes, Earth's economy must be stronger now than it was in 2007. Then he looks at the numbers. Suddenly the picture shatters. U.S. households are $16 trillion poorer. 10 million more Americans are unemployed. The stock market has been cut in half. Consumer confidence has collapsed. The alien is confused, bewildered. Nothing's been destroyed, he says. Your cities are intact. Your machines still work. Your knowledge has grown. Your tools are sharper. So why are you panicking? Why do you feel poorer? What changed? The answer is terrifying in its simplicity. The story changed. In 2007, we told ourselves a comforting tale. One where housing prices never fall, where banks are wise, where markets are precise and rational. But in 2009, we stopped believing. And that shift in belief, not technology, not war, not disease, triggered a financial earthquake that wiped out trillions. It brought the economy to its knees. That's how fragile prosperity can be. That's how powerful stories are. Because while factories, highways, and patents measure our capacity, the narratives we believe determine whether we use that capacity or suppress it out of fear. Germany in 1945 lost its economy to bombs. Japan in the 2000s faced an aging population it couldn't stop. But America in 2009? We had everything, except belief. And when belief collapses, reality follows. Here's what that means for you. Fear spreads faster than facts. Excitement builds wealth, but only when it's rooted in confidence. And urgency is essential, because every day someone is writing the story of your financial future. If you don't write it, someone else will. And it may not end in your favor. So remember, the most dangerous economic risk isn't a market crash. It's a broken narrative. And the most powerful investment isn't just money, it's the belief in your own future, even when the world doubts it. The story you choose to believe about your future will either be the engine that drives your success, or the anchor that quietly sinks it. Choose your story wisely. The economy may depend on it. Your life certainly does.
Part 1.
1. The seduction of the story you want to believe, a lesson in fear, fiction, and financial danger. What was the happiest day of your life? In the documentary How to Live Forever, that innocent question is posed to a woman over 100 years old. Her answer? Armistice Day, she said, referring to the 1918 ceasefire that ended World War I. Why? The filmmaker asked. Because we knew, she replied, eyes shining, there would be no more wars ever again. 21 years later, the world plunged into another war that killed 75 million people. This is the danger of wanting something to be true so badly that you ignore the reality staring you in the face. We all do this. We call them appealing fictions. Stories we tell ourselves because the truth is either too painful, too complex, or too uncertain. And nowhere are these fictions more dangerous than in the world of money. When you're desperate, you'll believe anything. Ali Hajaji's son was dying. The villagers in Yemen told him the cure was to press a burning stick into his child's chest. It sounds insane until you're that parent. Ali told the New York Times, when you have no money and your son is sick, you'll believe anything. Let that sink in. This isn't just about Yemen or medicine or ancient rituals. It's about you. It's about what you believe when your financial future feels like it's on fire. Because when the stakes are high and your control is low, you don't just try anything. You believe anything. The plague, the stock market, same human brain. In 1722, Daniel Defoe chronicled how Londoners responded to the Great Plague. Almanacs frighted them terribly. Streets were plastered with doctors' bills, advertising infallible pills and sovereign cordials. People were dying. There was no cure. So they clung to any story that promised one, even when it was a lie. Fast forward to today. You're not dying from the plague, but you might be terrified of dying broke. So what do? We watch pundits on TV selling predictions they couldn't back up with data if their lives depended on it. We follow YouTubers with zero credentials. We put our life savings in a meme coin or a stock tip someone swore would make us millionaires. Why? Because it's not just about money. It's about hope. If there's a 1% chance that a prediction could change your life, Emotion will beat logic every time. When hope becomes a hazard. If you want to believe a stock will 10x, that it's the next Amazon, it becomes part of your identity. You join a tribe. You ignore the odds, and you stop asking the hard questions, because facing reality might kill your dream. Let's be clear, 85% of active mutual funds underperform their benchmarks over a decade. Yet nearly $5 trillion remains invested in them. Why? Because people believe the next fund manager might be the next Warren Buffett. That belief isn't rooted in data. It's rooted in desire. Or take Bernie Madoff. His returns were impossibly consistent. His operations were shrouded in secrecy. And yet some of the most sophisticated investors in the world handed him billions. Because the story he sold, high returns with low risk, was simply too sweet to question. The greatest illusion in finance. In December 2007, just before the financial crisis, the Federal Reserve predicted modest economic growth for 2008-2009. Worst case scenario, 1.6% growth. Reality, the economy contracted more than 2%. Why didn't they predict that? Because no one wants to be the one to say out loud, it's going to get bad, really bad. That's the danger of appealing fictions. Even the experts, especially the experts, sometimes need to believe in soft landings, because the alternative is too terrifying. But believing in a lie doesn't make it true. The only real protection, room for error. Want to build true wealth? Want to sleep at night during a bear market? Then stop building your financial life on predictions, even your own. Instead, build it on margin, flexibility, independence, room for error. The more desperate you are for a specific outcome, the more likely you are to believe in a story that promises it, even when it's fiction. And the more room for error you allow yourself, the less likely you are to fall for a lie dressed up as a dream. Final thought. In finance, danger doesn't always look like a crash or a Ponzi scheme. Sometimes it looks like a smiling face on a screen telling you exactly what you want to hear. The more seductive the story, the more vigilant you must be. Because your future depends not on what you believe, but on whether what you believe is real. Don't fall in love with the story. Fall in love with the truth, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts.
Part 2.
The comfort of control and the danger of illusion. Everyone has an incomplete view of the world, and yet we all live as if our vision is complete. That's not a flaw. It's a survival mechanism. My daughter just turned 1. She's fearless, curious, captivated by every flicker of movement and sound. Her eyes light up when I walk into the room, and she cries when I leave for work. Not because she understands anything about jobs or money or responsibility, but because in her beautifully innocent worldview, Dad leaving means Dad isn't playing with me. So I'm sad. That's her story, her truth, and it's enough, for now. She doesn't know what a mortgage is, or a stock portfolio, or the Federal Reserve. But her brain doesn't stop and say, wait, I don't understand this. It fills in the gaps. She builds a complete narrative from incomplete information, because the alternative, admitting you don't understand the world around you, is terrifying. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You and I do the same thing, every day. And like my daughter, we usually don't even realize it. We explain markets as if they follow logic. We tell ourselves we know what the economy is going to do next. We make plans with absolute confidence as if luck, randomness, and unknown variables don't even exist. We crave the illusion of understanding. We need to believe the world makes sense, that it's predictable, controllable, explainable. But reality is far messier. Uncertainty rules more than we like to admit. And that cognitive dissonance? It leads us to create stories, not truth, just stories, that soothe our anxiety and make chaos feel manageable. We are all the aliens circling above Earth, gazing down, thinking we understand what's happening, and being completely wrong. The high cost of false confidence. Let's take finance as an example. Most of us assume that with enough research, discipline, and foresight, we can predict how the markets will behave. But markets aren't physics. They don't follow neat equations or tidy laws. They follow people. And people follow emotion. No model, no algorithm, no Harvard MBA can fully account for fear, greed, or panic. As Daniel Kahneman said, hindsight gives us the illusion that the world is understandable. It tricks us into thinking that if we just study the past hard enough, the future will obey our logic. But it won't. Markets crash not because of data, but because of stories that spread like wildfire. Stories that are often wrong. Predictions fail, bubbles burst, recessions surprise even the most seasoned experts. Yet we keep believing. Why? Because believing is easier than admitting we don't know. Because admitting we're not in control feels like standing on a ledge without a railing. So we grasp onto forecasts, pundits, and headlines, not because they're right, but because they feel reassuring. As psychologist Philip Tetlock put it, we need to believe we live in a predictable, controllable world, so we turn to authoritative-sounding people who promise to satisfy that need. The illusion of mastery versus the reality of uncertainty. Compare NASA and Wall Street. NASA can launch a spacecraft 3 billion miles and miss its target by less than a minute after nearly a decade. That's because astrophysics is a field of precision. Finance is not. It's a field of probability, emotion, and surprise. But we want it to be like NASA. We want Wall Street to predict the future with near-perfect accuracy because that feels safe. We want to believe we can win the game if we just know the rules. But business, investing, and life itself, they're not chess. They're poker. And even the best poker players lose hands. The danger lies not in uncertainty, but in pretending it doesn't exist. What happens when the stories we tell ourselves are wrong? Here's the hard part. The more confident you are in a story that isn't true, the more damage it can cause. You might buy at the top of a bubble because someone else did and you believe their reasons. You might quit your job, launch a startup, and ignore the market shifts happening outside your bubble of awareness, convinced that success depends solely on what you do, even when reality says otherwise. Kahneman laid it out clearly. We overfocus on our plans and ignore others' actions. We overestimate skill and underestimate luck. We focus on what we know and forget what we don't know. Every entrepreneur, investor, and dreamer falls into this trap. And like my daughter, we don't stop to think we might be wrong, because the story feels too good, too neat, too complete. So what's the solution? It's not to stop telling stories. It's to stay humble. To remind ourselves that what we know is always a tiny slice of a much bigger picture. To recognize that confidence without awareness of blind spots is a recipe for disaster. In a world overflowing with noise, information, and false certainty, the most powerful mindset you can adopt is one of curious humility. Don't believe everything you think. Question the stories that feel a little too perfect. And remember that the greatest wisdom isn't in knowing everything, it's in knowing how much you don't. Because the moment you accept how little control you have is the moment you begin to truly take control. And that, quietly, humbly, bravely, is how real power begins. Urgency takeaway. In an uncertain world, clinging to false certainty is not just risky, it's dangerous. The stories we tell ourselves can lead us off cliffs we didn't even know existed. You don't have to predict the future to be wise, but you do have to accept that you can't. Start today. Question your narratives. Seek understanding, not control, because your future depends on what you do after you admit what you don't know. Chapter 19. Congratulations, you're still reading. That alone puts you in rare company. In a world addicted to shortcuts and dopamine hits, you're doing something extraordinary. You're thinking long term. Now let's bring it all together. A dentist, a tragedy, and a lesson too many ignore. In 1931, Clarence Hughes walked into a dentist's office complaining of pain. He expected relief. Instead, he got something far worse. He was knocked unconscious, and when he woke up, groggy and confused, 16 of his teeth were gone. So were his tonsils. He didn't ask for that. He didn't consent to it. And a week later, Clarence Hughes was dead. His wife sued, not because he died. In 1931, surgery was always a gamble. No, she sued because he was never asked. The courts hesitated. Doctors, they said, need the freedom to make the best decisions for their patients. It was a belief rooted in trust, authority, and tradition. The doctor knows best. But medicine has changed since then. Today, treatment is no longer something done to you. It's something done with you. Why? Because the medical community finally accepted a hard truth. People are different. Pain is subjective. And the right choice isn't always universal. And you know what? The same is true about money. The silent mistake in financial advice. Giving someone blanket financial advice without knowing their values, goals, or fears is like pulling someone's teeth without asking. I don't know what you want your life to feel like. I don't know what keeps you up at night. I don't know if you'd rather have freedom at 40 or luxury at 70. So no, I can't tell you exactly what to do with your money. But just like doctors, financial advisors, and thinkers do know the patterns. We know what tends to work. We know what usually ends in regret. We've studied the autopsies of financial failure, and from that hard-earned knowledge, we can offer something powerful. Not prescriptions, but principles. So here are a few ideas worth carrying with you. Not rules, not commandments, but tested truths that can guide your financial life like a compass through a fog. Chest 1. Respect the power of time. Every dollar you save today is a soldier working for your future. The earlier you deploy them, the larger your army becomes. Delay is expensive. Start small, but start now. Urgency, you don't have to wait to be rich to start acting wisely. You just have to begin. 2. Define what enough looks like. The world will always try to convince you that happiness is one upgrade away. Bigger home, newer car, better lifestyle. But the pursuit of more is a treadmill that never stops. If you don't define your own finish line, the world will do it for you, and it won't be kind. Fear. Without knowing you're enough, you risk working a job you hate for a lifestyle you don't even want. 3. Build a margin of safety everywhere. Things will go wrong. Jobs vanish. Markets crash. Emergencies hit when you least expect. Build your finances not for the sunny days, but for the storms. An emergency fund isn't a luxury, it's armor. Excitement. When you have cash reserves, you stop living in fear and start making decisions from strength. 4. Be a long-term optimist, short-term realist. History rewards patience, but patience gets tested, hard. The stock market, your career, even your relationships will go through brutal winters. Expect it. And when it happens, don't flinch. Urgency. How you behave in chaos will matter more than what you did in calm. 5. Avoid extremes, in money and in life. The people who go all in on any financial trend, crypto, real estate, day trading, frugality, often end up burned. Balance is boring, yes, but it's also resilient. Fear. Extremes make headlines, but they rarely make legacies. 6. Wealth is what you don't see. No one brags about their emergency fund. No one sees your maxed out 401k. But real wealth is silent. It's the car you didn't buy, the vacation you delayed, the lifestyle you chose not to upgrade. It's freedom. And freedom doesn't post on Instagram. Excitement. Every time you choose financial discipline, you buy a little more control over your future. Let's end with this. The best financial strategy is the one that lets you sleep at night and wake up excited for tomorrow. It's personal, it's emotional, and it's yours. I can't make the choices for you, but I can leave you with this. The most dangerous financial move is not losing money, it's living a life dictated by someone else's definition of success. Clarence Hughes died because a decision was made for him. Don't let the same thing happen to your financial life. Be informed, be intentional, be the one holding the pen to your own story. Because it's not just about money, it's about the life you get to live because of it.
Part 1.
Let me tell you a story. It's about a man named Daniel. Daniel grew up in a modest neighborhood outside of Chicago. His parents worked hard, loved harder, and never made more than $50,000 a year between them. But they never missed a meal. Not once. That was their wealth. Daniel, like most of us, got caught up in the illusion of more. More money, more status, more stuff. His first big paycheck from a tech job didn't go into savings. It went into a lease for a BMW he couldn't afford, a watch he didn't need, and dinners he couldn't remember. On the outside, he was winning. Inside, he was drowning. In debt, anxiety, and a quiet fear, he'd built his identity on sand. Then one night, lying awake in a beautiful apartment he couldn't sleep in, he realized something. He'd been playing someone else's game. We live in a world obsessed with appearance, a culture that confuses net worth with self-worth, where the loudest voice in the room gets the attention, and the biggest spender gets the respect. But here's the truth that very few will tell you. The real flex isn't how much you spend, it's how little you need. Humility when you're winning will save you from pride. Compassion when you're losing will save you from shame. Because no one's as brilliant as their best day suggests, or as broken as their worst. Luck and risk are invisible threads in every story. You don't control them, but you can control your response to them. And that's where the real power lies. Want to know a secret most millionaires won't say out loud? Wealth is invisible. It's not the car, it's not the shoes, it's not the first-class tickets or the penthouse suite. Those are signs of spending, not saving. Wealth is peace of mind. Wealth is options. Wealth is sleeping well at night because your money isn't driving your decisions. You are. The biggest difference between those who build real wealth and those who don't? Ego. Specifically, the ability to control it. The gap between your ego and your income is where savings are born. And savings, they are the oxygen of freedom. Let's be honest, life is uncertain. It will hit you in the face when you least expect it. Emergencies don't RSVP. Layoffs don't send calendar invites. That's why saving, without a specific reason, is one of the smartest things you can do. It's a quiet armor against chaos. A soft landing when the world pulls the rug out from under you. You save not just for the known, but for the unknowable. And while we're talking about fear, here's one to consider. Are you gambling with your future just to feel rich today? Because here's the thing. Flashy now usually means fragile later. The rich feel temporary thrill. The wealthy feel lasting calm. That calm comes from understanding this. Your financial life is not a test you pass with a single right answer. It's a journey filled with doubt, risk, setbacks, and surprises. So when things go wrong, and they will, don't panic. Expect it. Know this. You can be wrong half the time and still end up wildly successful. Because in finance and in life, a small number of decisions drive most of your results. A few right moves can outweigh a dozen mistakes. That's why you need to worship room for error. That cushion, it's not wasted money. It's what keeps you in the game long enough to win. One more thing. Don't chase someone else's version of success. You might spend decades climbing a ladder only to find it leaned against the wrong wall. Define the game you're playing. Be brutally honest about what you want, not what Instagram tells you to want. Some play to retire early. Some play to build legacy. Some play to feel secure. Just make sure your moves make sense for your game. So what works for me? It's simple. I manage my money in a way that helps me sleep at night, not impress people I'll never meet. I invest in time, not just returns, because the longer I stay in the game, the more the odds tip in my favor. I save when I can, not just when I have to. I say no to flashy things so I can say yes to freedom. I try to be humble when I win, compassionate when I fail, and always, always aware that most of life's outcomes are shaped by factors I'll never fully control. But the way I respond? That's mine, and it can be yours too. Because real wealth isn't what you show, it's what you carry, in your savings account, in your choices, in your peace, and most of all, in your ability to say, I already have enough. Now the question is, what will you do differently starting today? Chapter 20. Confessions. Sophisticated, inspirational, engaging, and authoritative for a U.S. audience aged 18 to 50, driven by fear, excitement, and urgency. Imagine sitting across the table from a billionaire investor. Not just any investor, but someone like Sandy Gottsman, founder of First Manhattan, a man whose silence speaks more than words, whose eyes scan not for clever answers, but for quiet conviction. He leans forward, looks you straight in the eye, and asks one deceptively simple question: what do you own and why? Not, what stock do you think is undervalued? Not, where is the economy headed next year? Just, what are you doing with your money and why? That question is a mirror. It cuts through noise. It separates theory from action. Because what people say they believe often isn't what they live. Half of all U.S. mutual fund managers, people paid to manage your money, don't invest a single cent of their own wealth into the very funds they manage. Not a dime. That's not a small oversight. It's a flashing red siren of misalignment. If they don't trust the ship they're steering, why should you be on board? But this disconnect between words and actions isn't limited to finance. Dr. Ken Murray, a respected physician and USC professor, revealed a chilling truth in his essay, How Doctors Die. It turns out doctors, those who know medicine best, often choose vastly different end-of-life care for themselves than what they recommend to their patients. They refuse the aggressive treatments. They decline the heroic measures. Instead, they accept. They make peace. Because they understand the process. And they know that when it's their own life on the line, quality of time often matters more than quantity. That's not hypocrisy. That's human. It's the quiet admission that data doesn't feel. That when life or money gets personal, decisions stop being rational and start being real. You see, most people don't make financial decisions with spreadsheets. They make them at the dinner table. Not with calculators, but with heartbeats. Not to optimize returns, but to protect dreams, to avoid disappointment, to preserve trust, to sleep at night. There's no universal truth in personal finance. No master plan that works for everyone. There's only what matters to you. Your goals, your fears, your responsibilities, the things you would sacrifice returns for, without a second thought. So here's your moment of truth. If someone followed your money, not your advice, what would they learn about you? Would they see confidence or contradiction? Would they see someone who talks a big game or someone who walks their values? That question should haunt you, in the best way, because it calls out the only voice that matters in your financial journey, your own. The world is full of talking heads, predictions, gurus, and models. But when the market crashes, when your job feels shaky, when your child looks to you for stability, only one plan matters, the one you believe in. The one built not on theory, but on trust. In yourself, in your priorities, in your ability to stay calm when everything screams panic. So here's my confession. I don't chase the highest returns. I don't try to outsmart the market. I invest in a way that lets me sleep deeply, love boldly, and show up for the people who need. That's what works for me. What works for you? The clock is ticking. The market won't wait. And your future self is already watching, asking one simple question: what do you own and why? Choose wisely. Choose authentically. And above all, choose something that lets you live without regret.
Part 1.
How my family thinks about savings. Charlie Munger once said, I did not intend to get rich. I just wanted to get independent. That line hit me like lightning. Because deep down, I've never craved wealth for its own sake. I've craved freedom. Forget the jets, the yachts, the illusion of success on Instagram. True financial success, the kind that lets you breathe, isn't about showing off. It's about waking up every morning and saying, I can do what I want today, and I don't owe that freedom to anyone but myself. That's the bar my family lives by. Not rich. Independent. The legacy that changed everything. My parents taught me this without ever saying a word. My dad became a doctor at 40, with 3 kids and an avalanche of responsibilities already on his back. He spent years working brutal ER night shifts, flipping his body clock like a pancake, all to create space for a better life. But here's what left the mark on me. After 2 decades, he just stopped, walked away. No drama. No desperate scrabble to replace the income. Just quiet confidence. Independence earned, not inherited. I remember thinking, that's real wealth, not the paycheck. The power to walk away when the work no longer serves you. That moment became my financial North Star. Why we live below our means, even as our income rose. My wife and I started our lives with modest jobs in a modest apartment with hand-me-down furniture and a cheap car that squeaked in the rain. But it was enough. And over the years, despite promotions, raises, and glowing LinkedIn titles, our lifestyle hasn't changed all that much. We still live in that moderate zone. Comfortable, but not flashy. Simple, but not sacrificial. And that's not an accident. Every extra dollar we've earned has been funneled into one thing: our independence fund. That decision has had a compounding effect not just on our finances, but on our peace of mind. We're not trying to impress anyone. We're trying to outlast uncertainty. We stopped moving the goalpost, and that changed everything. If there's one decision I'm proud of, it's this. We got the goalpost to stop moving. Most people chase a lifestyle that outruns their income, always dreaming of the next big upgrade. More house, more car, more everything. But chasing more is a game you can't win. Someone will always have more. And the moment you let lifestyle inflate with income, you hand over your independence for a fleeting sense of status. We chose a different path. We anchored our lifestyle early. And that decision created breathing room, not just financially, but emotionally. Why we made the worst financial decision of our lives. We own our home outright. No mortgage, no debt. It's arguably the dumbest financial move we ever made, and the best money decision of our lives. Why? Because it gave us the one thing that no spreadsheet can quantify: emotional independence. No payments, no risk of foreclosure, no calls from the bank. We sleep better, we breathe easier, and we're not interested in maximizing returns at the cost of our sanity. This isn't about being right on paper. It's about being free in real life. We keep 20% in cash. Why? Because life happens. Financial advisors would raise their eyebrows at this one. But again, we're not optimizing for best practices. We're optimizing for resilience. We keep a hefty chunk in cash because we know the truth most people learn too late. Life doesn't wait until you're ready to hit you with a massive expense. A medical emergency, a job loss, a family crisis. We've seen them all up close. And cash is what keeps those events from turning into financial earthquakes. We're not saving for a boat. We're saving for a world where curveballs are the rule, not the exception. And here's the kicker. By avoiding the need to sell investments during tough times, we let our compounding machine run uninterrupted. As Munger said, the first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. In a world addicted to more, choose less on purpose. None of this is glamorous. It's not the kind of story you'll hear on a podcast about 10x returns, or read in a TikTok thread promising overnight riches. But it works. It works because we know exactly what we're aiming for. Independence, not indulgence. Peace, not prestige. Security, not status. And if you're reading this, wondering what your own savings are really buying you, ask yourself, if I stopped working tomorrow, could I breathe? Because real wealth isn't loud, it's quiet. It's the ability to walk away, to say no, to put your family first, not just in theory, but in practice. And you don't need millions to get there. You just need to want freedom more than you want more stuff. Final thought. We live in a world where the loudest people often seem the richest, but it's usually the quiet ones, living well below their means, who hold the real power. Independence is the grandmother of all financial goals, and you don't find it by accident. You build it, you guard it, and you never ever trade it for temporary applause. Choose peace. Choose freedom. Choose independence. Before life chooses for you.
Part 2.
How my family thinks about investing. A story of simplicity, discipline, and freedom. I started out believing I could beat the market. In my 20s, I was the classic stock picker, chasing undervalued gems, reading earnings reports like bedtime stories, and trying to outsmart the millions of other people doing the same thing. I held a carefully curated portfolio of about 25 individual stocks. Names like Berkshire Hathaway and Procter & Gamble sat beside obscure deep value plays I was convinced would be the next big thing. Did I succeed? Honestly, I'm not sure. Like most ambitious young investors, I didn't track my results well enough to say. What I do know is this. My investment philosophy has changed, not because I gave up, but because I woke up. Today, every dollar we invest goes into low-cost index funds. No flashy trades, no chasing headlines, just boring, relentless consistency. Why? Because I've learned something most people don't want to admit. Outperforming the market is brutally hard. Not impossible, but rare, elusive, and exhausting. If it were easy, everyone would do it. But markets aren't generous. They're brutally efficient, and they punish overconfidence. Let me be clear. I don't look down on active investing. Some people have the talent, the temperament, and the time to do it well. I admire those people. But I also recognize that for most of us, the greatest investing edge isn't brilliance. It's behavior. We're playing a different game. For my family, investing isn't about ego. It's not about beating the market or bragging rights. It's about freedom. About putting our money to work so we can spend more time together, sleep well at night, and live life on our terms. We don't follow trends. We don't obsess over market forecasts. Instead, we do 3 things. We invest every month into a mix of US and international index funds. We max out retirement and education accounts. We live simply, so we don't have to chase risky returns to meet our goals. That's it. No secrets, no shortcuts. The power of enough. I believe in something most investors overlook: the power of enough. We don't need to be the smartest investors. We just need to avoid being the